This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
World major economies have gathered in person in Southeast Asia for the first time in years to push for solutions amid global uncertainties and a complex policy landscape.
It is extremely important in this period of great instability.
It's so important to the revival, the recovery of world economy, which is at the moment at its stake.
The G20 meeting in Bali, Indonesia, and a gathering of 21 APEC economies in Bangkok as the end of the year approaches. What can we expect from the 2023 and the coming years ahead?
Asia-Pacific region provides the driving force and confidence for recovery.
I think it sent a very positive signal to the world.
In the spirit of cooperation, catalyzing a shared recovery and moving forward with an overarching vision of strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive growth in the region and the world at large.
It's wonderful if leaders meet and have time and space to exchange points of view.
I still believe in the win-win collaboration on the multilateralism.
These two summits are so important and has attracted the attention of people around the world.
Join us this week with BizTalk and find out how world leaders work to turn the multitude of shocks into opportunities and drive the development agenda in the Asia-Pacific and the world. Only on BizTalk, only on CGTN. Hello and welcome to this edition of BizTalk. I'm Zheng Jufeng in Beijing. With the global development beset by challenges and world economy on a downward trajectory, world leaders gather in Southeast Asia for the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia, and APEC in Bangkok, Thailand. With two major events, the world will strengthen solidarity and cooperation, coordinate macroeconomic policies, and work concertedly for strong, sustainable, inclusive, and balanced growth of the world economy. To discuss more about this, we are joined by four distinguished guests. Nelson Wong, Vice Chairman and Executive Director of Shanghai Center for RIMPAC Strategic and International Studies. He joins us from Abu Dhabi. Hello, Nelson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. We also have Professor Bert Hoffman, Director of East Asian Institute of National University of Singapore and Professor in Practice at the Lee Kuan Yew School. And Professor Hoffman used to be working with the World Bank. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
Great. We also have from Bangkok, Dr. Pai Chi. He's Vice Chairman and Secretary General of Thai Chamber of Commerce in China. He joins us from Bangkok. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
And we also have Juan Pablo. He's the president of the Uruguayan Association of Exporters. He joins us from Shanghai. Hello.
Thanks for having me here.
The world faces a volatile and difficult policy environment as people everywhere feel the impact of challenges in geopolitical tensions, deglobalization, inflation, food insecurity, and supply chain shortages. Looking ahead, there's also a gloomy global economic outlook on the horizon. Multilateralism and cooperation is still key to enhancing economic and financial coordination and finding common ground in tackling the challenges of economic recovery, the pandemic, and climate change. Well, gentlemen, the 2022 G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia, and APEC in Bangkok, Thailand brought together the major economies leaders in a physical meeting to the first time since the pandemic began 3 years ago. How important are such two gatherings for global governance and the global economy? Starting from you, Professor Hoffman.
I think it's a very important meeting. It's a critical time in the world economy, as you said, and there's a lot of big issues as in the context of worldwide inflation. There is now an adjustment of monetary policies, which drives up interest rates, which gives a lot of fallout for developing countries that need to borrow, and therefore their borrowing cost goes up. There's, of course, still the disruptions of COVID-19. Getting the group together again after more than 3 years is I think, very important. The bilaterals are important. We had a wonderful bilateral between President Biden and President Xi. And I think that was very good to stabilize the relationship. But more broadly, the economic issues at hand are important. And I think the agenda is very substantive from Indonesia. We're going to see a reasonably good outcome and a way forward.
Yeah. And now to Nelson. Nelson, you were attending some very important forums in Abu Dhabi and also in Europe. I guess those guests and strategists from Europe and from the Middle East are also paying attention to G20 and APEC.
The world, as our anchor has correctly pointed out, the world is in a very difficult time, and we are sailing into uncharted waters. But with the G20 summit and the APEC meeting, I think the whole world is getting very excited because our leaders are finally meeting with each other physically instead of online, which is different.
Right. Dr. Paichit, tell us how excited the city, how important is the APEC meeting to Bangkok?
In terms of the theme of G20, which is what common recovery and strong recovery, I think it reflects the whole world aspiration, that we need to maybe recover from what we have lost. I understand that this is the very first time in several years that the G20 leaders right now, will this time, will meet, in person. I personally do believe that the G20 and of course the APEC will be a very stepping stone, for the world at this time, at this point of time, to recover, from what we have lost in the past few years.
The multilateral events in such an international environment of global uncertainties cannot come at a better time. It is also the first in-person attendance at the G20 and APEC meetings since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic 3 years ago. It comes as the world increasingly turns to China and the broader Asia-Pacific region for recovery solutions. The events will help international society reaffirm commitment to open economic cooperation and the removal of trade barriers. Professor Bert Hoffman, you're in Singapore. You were used to be with the World Bank. Let me ask you your assessment of China's role in the G20 and APEC.
I mean, China plays a very important role in both. And if you recall, the G20 is really a child of crises. And of course, China was one of the chairs. When I was the country director for the World Bank in China in 2015, China, of course, hosted the G20, and it was a very successful G20. One has to say, though, that at the current stage, the G20 remains very important, and China is really quite central. The agenda that China has put forward over the years remains very relevant. And of course, China is now the second largest economy in the world. A lot of people looking at China. China will also be an important factor in the recovery of the world economy. The prospects of the IMF are not that positive, including for China, but for the world economy, 2.8% growth projected for next year is really very low. And some would say that's already a global recession. So China's growth and China's recovery is very important in this whole global picture as well.
And to Juan Pablo, Mr. You've been staying in China for some 20 years, but you're here representing the exporters' interest of Uruguay. Uruguay is part of the APEC economic circle. Tell us what is your understanding of the importance of G20 and APEC?
G20 is probably the most important ever. It started well. I'm sure in 10 years from now, we'll probably look back at this G20 as a milestone for the humanity prosperity. At the end of the day, we all know 85% of the world's economy output is represented by these 20 countries, 75% of the world trade. So it is extremely important in this period of great instability. Let's hope that then the teams of the big leaders of President Mr. Xi and President Biden will then follow up on the alignments between the two countries. and really have the intention of improve in a constructive way, putting on aside the prejudices and really looking at an improvement of the overall world situation with certain positivity. I'm very confident about it.
Right. Coming up next, with the world's eyes on Southeast Asia, the G20 and APEC will consider a concerted recovery policy combined with an open economy in the Asia-Pacific and the world.
Hopefully there will be put on aside the divergences that still will be there, but focus on solving the major issues of the economy.
Constructive meeting between the US and China, the leaders give a very good kickstart, not only to G20 and APEC summit, okay, but also I think to the world.
.360-degree profiles of industry movers and shakers, tech mavericks, and policymakers. We drill down on their success. We ask how they set strategy and how they navigate in an increasingly competitive market. Real talk, real business. Join the conversation. BizTalk, only on CGTN.
A meeting of world leaders from the group of 20 nations on the island of Bali. Indonesia's G20 presidency offers a unique opportunity for global leaders to deliver more inclusive, sustainable economic solutions. By gathering so many leaders together, G20 meetings offer rare opportunities to develop close relations on the creation of foreign policy and to recast bilateral ties. And Nelson, to you, let's look at some detailed themes of these events. The G20 events theme set by Indonesia, let me quote, global health architecture, sustainable energy transition. Of course, the world is going on energy crisis, we can even say, and digital transformation. Everyone wants a digital transformation. How relevant are these issues to the world, Nelson?
Well, the setting of the agenda this time for the G20 represents basically all the major challenges our world is facing at the moment. Disruption of supply chain, of global food and energy supply chain is quite apparent, actually. Also, the digital transformation is, of course, a matter of, course for our world economy. And but what I would like to point out is that, yes, the whole world is looking at 2023 as being a year of not that bright, actually. People are predicting a global recession for 2023. However, I think this is what this G20 meeting is going to be very important. And this is exactly why China's recovery is going to be so important. It's going to be so important, not only because China is the second largest economy in the world, but also let us do not forget that China is the major and biggest trading partner of over 100 countries. So that's why the economy of China is very much interwoven with the rest of the world. So this is why I believe, this G20 summit is going to be so important.
And Juan, do you want to add your point on this? What's your understanding of the themes of G20? Do you have any other issues that you think bear no less significance?
I fully agree with what has been said, because these topics are so important that now are not just top of mind of the government, the political leaders, the think tanks. This is really relevant to the society, the common people. Look at the COVID, for example. Everybody is demanding focus on healthcare investment, on health-related infrastructure, the vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. And the sustainable energy transition is somehow related because it's for the good of the planet, right? as well as digitalization, will improve efficiencies, will improve productivity, will improve people's lives. So certainly, the outcome of the G20, the fact that hopefully there will be put on a side the divergences that still will be there, but focus on the recovery, on solving the major issues of the economy and the plan that will certainly be extremely important to all different sides of companies to recover their production, their profitability, their jobs creation, and then their trading, and then as well the consumer confidence that at the end of the day is fundamental for a healthy development of the producers and the suppliers.
Embrace the vision of an Asia-Pacific community with a shared future. The Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum was established in 1989 and has become the preeminent economic forum in the region. As a host of this year's APEC meeting, the Thai government aims to play the role of mediator, help lower trade tensions between APEC economies, and steer the APEC ship forward under the theme of Open, Connect, Balance. Thailand announces the theme for APEC 2022, Open, Connect, and Balance. I think this Open, Connect, and Balance theme of APEC 2022, officially it means open to all opportunities, connected in all dimensions, and balanced in all aspects. Mr. Paiche, what's your understanding of the theme?
The theme that we proposed this year to open up, all the things, in terms of business opportunities, and of course, we want to move forward. In detail, we probably have heard about the BCG, Biocircular Green Industries, that I think what the world is moving toward for. We all agree that, after 30 years of development here in Thailand, we put, a lot of investment on the heavy industries that, on another hand, also, of course, destroy our environments. But, for the next 30 years, we also do hope that with the BCG, the strategies, we will move environments, as the core of the development, and of course, develop our economy sustainably. Okay. So we also would like, of course, to learn from China, as China has, I think, learned, experienced this kind of issues, for several years after being the factory of the world. So the green economies, digital economies, and several things, even common prosperities, are also the things that not only Thailand, but also I think the APEC members can learn from China. So with the very proactive role of China, I think APEC, can be more successful and bring many things into realities, quickly.
Right. And Professor Hoffman, you're from NUS, and Singapore is part of APEC. How do you understand the APEC 2022 theme, Open, Connect, and Balance?
These themes are very, very important. But I have to say that and it's great that APEC meets again. It's wonderful if leaders meet and have time and space to exchange points of view. I have to say that right now APEC is in a bit of a difficult bind, and the competition is fierce because remember APEC started in 1989. It was really to sort of connect across the Pacific, but the United States seems to have lost a little bit of an interest in using APEC as a vehicle for further integration. As a fact, integration, trade, full stop. So Asia has been moving ahead, and you mentioned RCEP already. Of course, the CPTPP is an interesting one, the now Japan-led organization, because that is actually across the Pacific, where also Peru and Chile are members. So they are APEC members, and they're also CPTPP members. That seems to be a good vehicle to sort of move ahead.
Coming up next, The 2022 G20 meeting and APEC will also help shift the global agenda towards the interest of developing Asia-Pacific economies.
China's investment in infrastructure in the region, from the railways to Laos, the railways in Indonesia, the ports in Indonesia, airports, are all very positive for further integration.
In 10 years from now, we'll probably look back as a milestone.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Reconnecting the dynamic region of the Asia-Pacific to support world recovery. The Asia-Pacific region is a growing hub for trade and investment that fosters open markets, creates jobs, and drives economic growth. It is also the first time in the same year that the G20 and APEC take place in Southeast Asia, ensuring food security in the region and boosting development of a digital economy topped the APEC agenda this year. Southeast Asia has been hosting a number of global meetings lately. It also leads the world in economic recovery this year, very upbeat. The whole region, 700 million people, is China's largest trading partner, surpassing North America and the European Union for quite a few years now. So what's the significance of China-ASEAN economic tie, and what implications does this tie has for other international relations? Let's start from you, Dr. Paichi.
If you look at this region, it will be the best region that stay between, of course, the two populous countries like China and India. So if ASEAN can link those two countries together, Asia, or Asian region will be even stronger, in the future. Of course, in terms of trade, in terms of FTA and expanded like FTA, ASEAN plus 3 plus India, Australia, New Zealand, and to other regions as well. And as we all know that just last year, they have also developed, into ASEC, the Regional Economic Partnership Corporation. This kind of development, fast development, of course, will bring the trade, as the key mechanism in order to push the region forward in terms of economic development. And of course, the ASEAN in itself, at this point of time, they also develop into the economic community or common market, where we can move, all the factor of endowments in terms of like labor, technologies, or even financial factors, all around the region, more freely.
Let's look at the global picture. Can the business world raise their hope for more recovery now?
In terms of the outlook into the future, I think confidence is very important. So the world will have to work together to get rid of all the differences that we might have, and use the talent, use the wisdom of our ancestors and of us today to find our way forward.
After a few years of rising unilateralism, multilateralism seems to have taken back some lost ground. Do you agree with such opinion? What's your observation from you, Dr. Paichi?
In the past decade, I think the unilateral has been on the rise, and even the protectionism is also coming back to the pictures. I still believe in the win-win collaboration on the multilateralism. I also do hope that unilateralism will be slowed down, will be reduced, and we'll go back to more of the regionalism and multilateralism, so that we can grow stronger in the future, from next year on.
As an intergovernmental forum dedicated to promoting free trade investment, APEC has expanded to address other key issues such as energy and sustainable development. Innovative funding is needed to stimulate investment and to encourage fund transfer to developing countries. It is hoped that all parties will work to build consensus and advance cooperation on promoting environmental protection and implementing the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I think after the Paris Accord and also the Glasgow agreements on carbon reduction, major economies have promised to cut reduction. So how do economies, developed economies and developing economies, balance between social welfare, economic recovery, and carbon reduction goals at such a time of global energy supply disruptions?
The incentive and the reasoning behind going green is very much shared around the world. But the problem we're facing at the moment is how you can make the developed countries to agree with all the developing countries in terms of the use of clean energy and to reduce emission of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas.
Professor Hoffman, let me ask you very briefly, because Nelson just mentioned that developed economies should assist developing economies in reducing carbon. What's your assessment?
No question, yes. And as a fact, that was agreed in Paris, that there would be help from developed countries to developing countries. The Paris Agreement is fantastic, but it's not enough. So the more developing countries can do and developed countries can do, the better. The problem with developing countries, it's not actually no longer technology. If you look at technology, thanks to great inventions around the world, thanks to China's scale, renewable energy is actually already cost competitive. But for developing countries, because their risk premiums are higher, finance is the problem. So developing the finance to finance the renewable energy in developing countries is going to be absolutely crucial. And some of it's happening, a lot more needs to be done.
Great, thank you for your input. Right, the G20 Bali Summit is the first multilateral summit the top Chinese leaders attend after the successful conclusion of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China. And China's attendance at this year's APEC Economic Leaders Meeting is also an important act of China's head of state diplomacy towards Asia-Pacific. This fully shows the high importance China attaches to the Asia-Pacific economic cooperation and the world at large. Now, thanks again to our guests, our four very distinguished guests, to Mr. Nelson Wong, Vice Chairman and Executive Director of Shanghai Center for RIMPAC Strategic and International Studies. Also, we thank Professor Bert Hoffman, Director of East Asian Study Institute of National University of Singapore, Dr. Pan Chit, Vice Chairman of Secretary General of Thai Chamber of Commerce in China, and also we thank Juan Pablo, President of Uruguayan Association of Exporters. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your input. And with that, we come to the end of this episode of BizTalk. I'm Zhen Jufeng. Thanks for watching. See you next time.